Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Beverly here, your questioning queen. Today I have a fantastic guest. It's Dr. Foojan Zeine. She's an international speaker, an author, and a psychotherapist. She is here to talk about the brand new, well, I'm not sure if it's a brand new, but it's a Foojan app that she created. It's brand new for me because I'm downloading it as we speak. And we just break down talking about how people live their best lives, how you live with a place of gratitude. We dabble with a little bit of trauma talk, a little bit of addiction talk, but with the root of it, we just get down how you can really become unstuck and really just start living your best life. So I hope you tune in and enjoy and, let me know what you think. Hey guys. Okay, let's get real. Do you sometimes feel like life's just a never-ending loop of wake up, drink coffee, go to work, waste countless hours scrolling online, eat, watch TV, maybe read a book, sleep, and then repeat? Have you ever really thought, is this really it? Guess what? You're not the only one. I help people just like you, well, and me, to get unstuck. I'm bringing on amazing guests who will inspire you, challenge you, and maybe even blow your mind. Let's face it, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. But lucky for you, I know exactly how to help. With a little bit of woo and a whole lot of you, it's time to unstick your stuck and shake that thing up. Let's do this on Beverly Explains It All. Hey guys, welcome to Beverly Explains It All. I am Beverly, your questioning queen, and today I have Foojan Zeine. She's an international speaker, an author, and a psychotherapist. Hey Foojan.
Hi, Beverly. It's so nice to be with you.
You too. Well, you know my show. I always like to start with a quick, 3-question yes/no icebreaker. Are you down to play?
Absolutely.
Amazing. All right. Well, are you someone who believes in the power of daily habits?
Absolutely, yes.
Me too. Do you think that everyone can improve their mental well-being?
If they want to, yes.
Ooh, I like it because it's loaded.
Motivation.
Okay. Yep. All right. Do you think that people should always trust their instincts?
It goes beyond yes and no. Is that okay?
Yes. And I'd love to be able to jump into that later. I thought that would be like a thinker. On that note, can you please tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Of course. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach for past kind of 35 years. And I developed a psychology model based on the best of the best of the psychology model that were there, and kind of took the best of them and brought it together and created a structure, which is an open structure, handles the present moment, cleans the past, which most of us kind of carry with ourselves. So cleans up the past and then envisions tomorrow and kind of moves forward. And it brings a very deep level of work, transformation work from internal, however, very quickly and very briefly. So I call it like a deep dive in a very brief level. And because we've done a lot of research, Beverly, on this, we've also created an app, Foojan App, and then with that, an AI companion assistant where you can ask, any questions about your life, about your relationships. And the AI app, which is called Mira, will answer you from the awareness integration theory that I developed. And then I wrote 4 books, which, we can relate with relationships. You could, companies, how do they deal with employees and management, how to deal with your life, with every area of your life. Like there's 31 areas of life that we could actually deal with and move forward and look at that. So it's an international institute. I teach also in Cal State Long Beach and in a university in Paris and Romania. So it's like, we're going out there and taking this theory for life fulfillment, for mental well-being, and allowing everybody, whether they're in universities, they're in school, they're in clinical work, they go to psychotherapy, or they need coaching, for them to have availability to use this so that they can feel fulfilled in their life.
I absolutely love that. And I'm so sorry I didn't even regard to you as doctor. I'm like, you better put some respect on her name. Oh my God. You're just so like internationally renowned. It's such an honor to even have you here. I mean, to hear about all of your work, it's just like it's incredible, honestly. And I love just your approach to help people with mental health because it's a thing that I think it's becoming a little more talked about, but it's just always still kind of a secret.
Beverly, one thing that happens, I think when we talk about mental health, a lot of people think about mental illnesses. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about mental illnesses. I'm talking going through life,
Yes.
phases of life,
Yeah.
difficulties of life,
Like
gaining
every
life
day.
skills,
Yeah.
those are the ones that puts us down and creates the anxiety and, a lot of the depression and wrong, what we do at work and what do we do with money and what do we do
Yep.
with our relationship. So that's
Mhm.
why I kind of call it like mental health and well-being. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily handling mental illness only.
Right. And I like the way that you phrased it because some people are scared to say, like, well, I'm having like a mental issue right now. Like, it's not even always like a mental issue. I mean, it is, but it feels like more, I don't know. It's just a different way of saying I'm taking care of my well-being, you know?
Yes, the same way where you could have, an illness, like you could have diabetes or a high cholesterol or any type of illness, or you could look at if I'm not doing well in my eating and exercise and what you still talked about habit, daily habit and creating
Yes.
these, I'm going to get to the diabetes. I'm going to get to the illness. So there's a way to handle life with skills where you don't get to the necessarily the mental illnesses. Or if genetically you're prepositioned to have that mental illness, at least you could manage it in a way that you could have a functional and a fulfilling life.
Right. Yes. I mean, about that, can you talk about some simple and like practical skills that people can use in life when the crap hits the fan, when life is lifing, like what can we do that's not hard to do?
One of the things that I think it's important is to distinguish whether what's happening in front of me I have some control over, and what parts of it it's nothing that I can do about, right? And then
Yeah.
I can then focus on what is it that I have something to say about it or do, and then start looking at my own thought process, my own emotions and the way that I behave, and look at how my thoughts, emotions, and behavior influences, impacts that result, and look at what I do that creates usually, better impacts versus destructive behaviors,
Mhm.
irrational beliefs, negative thought processes that I have about others or me that guides me to behave in a way that I actually destroy relationships. So the more
Mhm.
that I become aware of myself, it becomes the stepping stone. It becomes the beginning of shifting and creating some shift so that I can do that. I usually look at it as driving. We're constantly driving with so many people, with external laws, and so many people out there that we have no control over.
Right.
Somehow we get from, every day we get from one location to another just by being in control of my own hands, where I'm watching my
Mhm.
attentiveness, my legs, and taking care of my car. Just based on that, I've been driving for so long with no accidents. So
Right.
it can, if you take the same analogy and putting it in life, if I can keep looking at what am I in control of and can I do my best with what
Mhm.
am I in control of, then I have a higher probability of creating some sort of success in my life.
Yes. I like that analogy of driving because it's kind of like being aware, but that awareness is just there already. I like that a lot. Wow. This is kind of like a loaded question that I think it still has to do with the first one, but like, how can people achieve happiness in life? Obviously, that's what we're all searching for. And I know
Yes.
that's like so loaded because it's like, okay, but what are your studies and your thoughts on that?
Well, happiness is an attitude, right? So you
Mhm.
get to see people who can be happy with holding gratitude, although they have the worst luck and things have happened to them that even one of those things that happened to any of us could really bring us down.
Yeah.
The delusion is that I can be happy all the time. We go up and down with life. It's okay to be sad and angry and anxious at times. Those feelings are there because there's a purpose into them. They also have a message for us, and they're there to protect us. But happiness itself is a state that I could look at life and keep looking at the positive angles of it and balance the positive and negative, and kind of lean into the gratefulness, the gratitude, lean toward my resiliency, lean toward my greatness, my power, and moving forward, while I'll acknowledge my vulnerabilities and take care of my vulnerabilities, handle my vulnerabilities, but move on with my strength. And the more that I'm able to do this for myself, and the more that I get to see the greatness in people around me, the things that are happening around me, then I hold myself into more of the happiness of life. And that's how we keep being happy. It's not like these moments. Any of us can go into moments that we can have joy, but to have the state, it means that I really got to work at anything that shows up with me, that I can look at all angle of it. And I'm not saying like deny the negative, no, because then they're going to catch us. Watch all of it, but put your attention, because that's where your energy goes. Put your attention into what you can do, the positivity of it, what you're gaining. And in that state, you're always full. You're not empty. You're always full, because you're going with your greatness and everybody else's greatness who are around you. And together you hold that space.
That is so powerful. Like, I love it, because I am really trying to live in a state of gratitude these days, because I've noticed, just like, oftentimes, or just over the years, when you take things for granted, we all do, just being awake and alive is something I think all of us kind of take for granted. But I've noticed that when I become more like just thankful for the little things, or just living in that state of gratitude, I am just genuinely more happy. And then I feel like it's a little infectious. Like, when you're happy, you kind of pass that along to someone. Either they're going to think you're annoying as hell, or they're just going to like hop on board. Like, man, like I've noticed at work, I'm like smiling more and just like, getting a chance to like really stop and talk to people. And like, it feels like people kind of change when you have that state. Like, when someone's happy and I'm having a bad day, not that I'm not like, oh, don't be around me, but it's like, it kind of it opens my perspective of like, I want to speak to this person, because, like, you just take the time and it makes you reflect on your life and kind of just be a little happier.
Very much. Another thing that showed up for me to share with you, I think that I know myself, that I became much more happy when I started to accepting reality as is versus fighting. I was miserable when I would be anywhere and it's like, that just shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything, sometimes you're like, that should not be that way, and I'm going to change it. But there's so many things that you can't change. And if you can change it, take your power, take your resiliency, take your wisdom, and do the actions in order to change it. But the misery is not when there's something I don't like and I get to change it. That actually gives us happiness, because we're like, I'm powerful and I can do it.
Yeah.
The part that creates misery for us is things we cannot change. We don't have the power. We don't have the role. We're just not there to be able to change it. But then I resist it. And I'm like, no, it shouldn't be this way. I learned that if I get to see the reality as is, then I get to deal with it. So accepting reality as is doesn't mean I have to like it. Right. It just means I don't bargain around that it shouldn't be, because it is. And now I can, like the driving thing, I can constantly be upset. How come there's traffic? Well, girl, there's traffic. So might as well, when I accept and I don't get all bottled up and upset and, honk at everybody and all of that, then I can say, okay, what are some things I can drive when it's not? I could change my hours. But if these are all the things I got to do and I got to hit traffic, might as well have the traffic be. Now I get to listen to my audiobook, or listen to your podcast, or talk to my friends and have fun. But so when the resistance of this reality should not be there changes, then I get to do something with it.
Yes. I mean, you are speaking my language. I hope people are really soaking this in and thinking about it, because like one of my statements that I've said over the years, like years now, is like, it is what it is. And you know, when you're younger, you're like, oh, it is what it is. Cause like I think it was like a trendy thing to say or something. But there's been so many occasions in my life where I've said it is what it is. And literally it just became a period at the end of it, where it's like, it is. I mean, that's it. It is what it is. Like now we can deal with it. I can't change this. Yeah, I might not like it, but it is, you know?
And you
So
see
what
this a lot in relationships, right? Like also a marriage and family therapist for 30 years. So I work with marriages, divorces, couples, families, and all of that. And you see
yeah.
that a lot, right? That couples come in, loving each other and only looking at their greatness, and then after a while they only see the other person's
It's
things
wild.
they don't like, and then they bargain and they fight, and it shouldn't be, and you should change, and all of this happens, and it comes at one point where it's like, okay, it is what it is. And now you could choose. I've had so many people who said it is what it is and I'm leaving, or they
Mhm.
chose it is what it is and I'm actually staying, and I'm going to handle what is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, the misery goes away, because from there on they'll either left and found the life that they wanted, or they
Yeah.
stayed and created a life that was suitable for them from then.
Yep. It's like as soon as you figure out what it is, then you can move on. You either move on the way, I feel like whatever way you choose is the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Man. I mean, we were talking a little bit before about like just anxiety in general. I am definitely a person who gets anxiety. I think all of us do, and I know there's different degrees of it. I was talking with a coworker talking about how we get anxiety P, like just nerves. But how can we get anxiety out of the way? Is there like any kind of techniques we can do?
Sure. Anxiety is set up in our system to protect us, right? So it's one of those emotions that shows up and says, "Ah, watch out, this thing is going to happen." So, so basically, that's all that anxiety is saying. However, I think sometimes we have a way of creating scenarios and scaring the crap out of ourselves while that scenario doesn't exist.
All the
So
time.
right, right. So, so if you're not against anxiety and you're like, okay, this emotion is sharing with me that I need to watch for something. Okay, thank you. Knock knock. Okay, I opened the door. I got it. There's two things that happens with anxiety. One is a physiological experience, right? So the minute that your body's going, there might be a danger, there's like over 90 chemicals and hormones are pouring in, taking you into a sympathetic response to fight, run,
Uh-huh.
protect yourself.
That
So
fight or flight.
yes, so if the chemicals are pouring in your body, you got to release them. You got to release them. So how do we release them? Anxiety is one of those feelings that it's in your muscles, it's everywhere,
Yeah.
and you need
Yes.
to move. You
Yeah.
need to move, walk, run, do something that gets out of your system in that way. The next part of it is breathing, because when you start breathing a little bit deeper,
Mm.
it tells your body everything is safe. It's okay. I've checked. You can calm down. So you begin breathing all the way to the bottom of your stomach, and like what we call belly breathing instead of this, breathing from your chest. And that breathing tells your body we're safe. So then it stops pouring those chemicals and starts pouring another set of chemical that brings your body down. So we go from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic response, which tells your body to calm down. Now that's the physiological part of it. The psychological part of it is doing reality check. Like, okay,
Mm.
thank you. This emotion is telling me that I should watch out for something. Okay, let me see. Am I really in danger? What are the consequences that I would get? What are the what ifs, what ifs, what ifs? If I see the worst case scenario, can I handle it? And is it here right now? Do I need to handle it right now? Is there anything I could do about it right now? And if your brain says yes, do it. If your
Yeah.
brain says no, it's 11 o'clock at night, there's nothing you can do right now. You're like, okay, I'll leave it until tomorrow morning and do something about it. So it's like bringing the thought process into a reality check. And within that reality check, then you could see what I need to do. Sometimes when somebody goes into a spiral, I'm like, write it down, write the reality check right now. The pros and the cons of doing this, the pros and the cons of the against. So the act of writing connects the right brain, left brain together, kind of brings your wisdom and frontal cortex to your emotional side and brings them all both together. So you're just not getting hijacked by the emotion. And after that writing and putting it in perspective, and then you come back as, what am I in control of? What is it what I could do about this? And when do I need to do about this? And then you leave it there and take the deep breaths and then let it out of your system. And then, kind of like move on to the next level. That's how you calm down your anxiety. Now, if they have a chemical deficiency, like, people who have OCD, obsessive compulsive, you can't just do this with your thought process, because there's almost like, have you ever had a washer that doesn't work? You turn on the water and then you turn off and the water shuts off. If you had a washer, which you turn on the water, you turn it off, but it leaks.
Yep.
That's what happens with obsessive, OCD. We're like, is the door closed? Let me check. Then you check it. It's closed. Okay. Is the door closed?
Right.
Check it. Is the door closed? Right. So it's like that leaky water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you shut down the faucet, it keeps leaking. And in those scenarios, you do need to, psychotherapy plus medical management in order to get all those chemicals right for yourself.
There's so much in there that you said, just to unpack. I'm wondering about OCD, just because you brought it up. It's really interesting. Do you think like people can have like slight cases of OCD? Like, for example, and like, this is no joke and people might be surprised, but sometimes I swear like I might have like a little OCD, just because when I turn off my stove, I have to double check. Like, I will literally go to like, I know I've turned it off, and now I go to the living room and I'm sitting down, but I'm like, I need to make sure I've turned it off, so I go back and I have to click, 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 and make sure it's off. And even at night, like, I know I've turned off the stove, because you do it and you're not thinking, so you don't remember that you've done it. So I'm like, honey, you got to go downstairs and make sure it's off. Like, is that a normal thing? And is there any way without like psychotherapy, like, is that an anxiety thing? How is there a way to calm that down?
Sometimes when there's only an obsession over one thing and not everything else, that it doesn't need to be like an OCD. It could be that, there was a trauma, there was a fear, that something happened when you were younger, and that kind of like, that fear by itself, because there was a consequence that, it kind of stuck. So sometimes when we deal with the trauma and let it go out of the system, that kind of sensitivity goes away. OCD usually, it does have a theme. Like sometimes it creates a structure around germ. Like people are all afraid of germs. Some people are around, kitchen stuff or doors. But it usually, when somebody has OCD, there's a ritual that happens.
Really obsessive.
Yeah, and it goes on. But if there's only one or two things, like some people are just, like germophobic. They're not OCD. It's just as they, as I had a cousin, which he got cats, and every time the cats walked, they were, cleaning them with Clorox on the bottom.
Oh, no.
And then you could go back and see his mother was like that, his grandmother was like that. So it was a hand-me-down kind of phobia around this issue. And this wasn't anywhere else. It was just about, like if you go outside, you had to take your shoes off. He would take his shoes off like this, clean it with Clorox.
Wow.
And it only happened with those things. And you could trace it back behaviorally toward, all of his ancestries, because that was the one thing that they shared that came down as a ritual, as a habitual. So sometimes you'll see this is a habitual concept. Sometimes you see there was a trauma, like if, there was a fire or there was something that happened and it was because the gas leak, then this gets stuck. So every time it's like, okay, you got to go check just the stove if it doesn't go anywhere else. So that could be the possibility of those. Whether it can be done without therapy, I don't know how deep it is, because that's what therapy does. Therapy goes looking for the causality and treat it and let it go, and kind of like either desensitize you or clean up the trauma. And part of what I created also with the awareness integration therapy is that you certainly go back and look at not only belief systems, but trauma, because we carry these all the time, even in our muscles, even cellular level. We carry these rituals, family rituals, and our trauma is consistently with us. So although that we might keep learning skills and moving forward, if we're not cleaning up these pieces, it keeps coming back and sabotaging us and moving us back. So that's why I wanted to create something that it was comprehensive. Like you could not only could create skills for today, you could clean up the past and keep moving with your strength in creation of intentional future.
I that sounds so incredibly helpful. Thank you for the free medical advice, by the way. I think I'm okay. Thank you. I want you to tell my listeners a little more about the awareness integration therapy, and also how it differs from just regular therapy.
Of course. It has the component, some therapies such as cognitive behavior, RABT, a lot of those are about if you change your thought process, you'll change your emotion. Some other theories say if you change your emotion and really get in tune with your emotion, then you could change, the thought behind it and behavior. Behaviorists say you change the behavior, right? They work with autism, they work with elderly, all of those. You change the behavior and then you'll change everything else. Body mind is you change your body and then everything else changes. And I'm like, yes, 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 yes to all. And because of that, we're going to bring all of it together. So we're going to deal with all four doors. We're going to go from all four doors in, become aware of all of those. And plus that, so it's taken from all of these other theories and the best of them and brought together. And looking at your thought, your emotion, your behavior, and the results, the impacts that has on your body, and how they influence every thought, every emotion, every behavior, and how it creates these results. Another thing about this theory is we live in relationships. Like every human being lives in a relationship and a role. Like if they take your roles away, and if you're kind of like stuck somewhere for 30 days with no other human being or animal or anything, you keep talking to yourself. You create a relationship with something, right? Because we live in relationships, then you can always see this identity we create in different relationships. And sometimes we create different identities. And you might say, I have a different, I am a different person in a way and behave differently when I'm with my husband or when I'm child or at work or when I'm a podcast, host or, in my neighbor, because this is who we are. We have different values, different behaviors, different communication styles when it comes to different relationships. And sometimes we have skills in one area that hasn't transferred to other areas. I'm sure our listeners can attest to that. We go to work, we learn how to be professional, we know how to handle difficult people, we know how to manage our anger, and then we go back for a Christmas or a Thanksgiving to our family system, and all of those skills are gone, right?
Yeah. Now we get real.
Yes. And as a 5-year-old shows up and it's like, I forget that I can do this in my work. And when it comes, it's like, I'm not in control. I can't control myself. So the therapy also goes looking at all of of who we are in all of these relationships and connect these together. And then look at what are your strengths, your belief systems that work for you. What are some of the behaviors that have worked for you? What are some of the emotions that really work for you? And we want to put them in one pile so we can live by them. And then we want to look at things that don't work for us so we can create another skill around them. And then based on that, we see what kind of belief systems we've held throughout life, possibly getting it from families or we created it ourselves. And then based on that, we go and clean it up. We clean up all of those negative belief systems. If there were traumas, we clean those traumas out. And then so we create a wholeness because we split as human beings as we're growing up. We split, things that shouldn't be out there, things that we shouldn't be doing, our shadow sides, the traumas we've had, all of those get split. So sometimes we react without the other parts really being informed and coming and supporting us. So when we become a whole, you have access to all your vulnerabilities, all your skills, all your strengths, all at the same time. And from here, then we start setting intentionality in our life. Like I intend for my marriage to be this way. So I'm going to operate from here. I mean, I intend to have this relationship with my child. I intend to have this kind of things to be that way in my work. So then you could create intentional life for ourselves, which I operate from that way, where this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to hold these values. I'm going to promise and commit to these type of behaviors. These are the thought process I'm going to hold. These are the emotions I'm going to foster consistently. Like you said about happiness, I'm going to foster joy. I'm going to foster gratitude. I'll listen to my anxiety and sadness and anger, but I'm going to foster these other pieces, right? So then from there, I can set goals in every area of my life and be very intentional. And as long as I'm getting my goals done, I want to check in and say, good, and look at the, what got me there and have those in my tools. And the ones I didn't get, I can go back and look at what kind of thought or emotion or behavior I did, which I didn't get there. And then how can I shift it again and move forward? So you live in the present moment, bring the past, clarify it, clear it, integrate it, and keep looking at the future of what I want to create, then come back and live in the present moment and behave toward it. This is how the system is comprehensive and takes everything that is about you into consideration.
Wow. So from all of that, I mean, you truly can become your authentic self, because if I'm getting you correctly, it's like you can then be that person. You're not no longer the person you are at work, then the person you are with your family, or the person you are with the guy at the grocery store. You're always that same person, period.
Imagine that you're naked. That's your body. And then you have all of these dresses, or outfits in the closet.
Yeah.
You get to choose what you want to wear because you're going to an appropriate place that needs an appropriate attire.
Yeah.
But who you are is your body.
So you're always your authentic.
You're always your authentic self, and then choose based on your goals and whatever you need to do, which attire am I going to put on in order for it to be appropriate? So who am I going to be at work, which is appropriate for the culture of the work that I'm doing?
I love it.
Going to be, with my family, which is fosters loving and intimacy and creates all of those, right? So I choose out of all my skills, out of all the emotions I have, out of all the thoughts that I have, I choose which one of these that I have is going to be workable in here for what I say I want.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. I mean, it's just, I'm just imagining me, because I'm like, okay, I know who I am. And then I have all these options of dresses and things, but it's like being able to put it on, but also being very true to myself. I'm not faking it, because this is who I am. And this is who I am in this environment.
Yes. Yes. It's
I like
not
that.
faking it. It's bringing
Right.
best into what you need to do. Right. So for example, I always go back to driving, partly because all of us experience that, right? So if I'm driving in a slow lane, then I choose to drive slower because of that. If I'm, driving in a fast lane, if I'm driving where there's children, depending on what's happening outside of me, because I can't control the outside. The outside is the outside.
Right.
I can bring my best to the outside world and be a partner with whatever it is that it's workable.
And living from a place of awareness and gratitude will help you get there as well, right?
Yes. So it's gratitude about who I am and gratitude about all that there is. The gratitude to have the opportunity to meet you, to be with everybody who's listening. The gratitude that, we have this technology to have this ability to be together, that we both have electricity to have the ability to do this. These are all like, how do we know it's essential? Because the minute it isn't, we get pissed off. Right. As it's like it was right for us, it was our right to have it. We have an expectation of it to be there, but when it's there, it's like, it should be there. Well, but it's great that it's there. It just isn't like it should be there. It's great that it's there.
Right. And I think that just helps you also appreciate the little things and just people that you take for granted. I'm wondering, with this technique, how can it help people who are just like frustrated a lot in life or just angry and they don't necessarily know why, but they just are, and that's their personality?
I don't think everybody this their personality up front, like when they got born. It's
Yeah.
almost like a beautiful, diamond that is just has a lot of dust on it. And
I
it
like,
has a bit
yeah,
of stuff on it. So when we
yeah,
clean it up with all of this mess, then the human being essence shows up. Yes, human beings are born with some temperament and sensitivity, but the point is how to deal with our sensitivity. The more that we're aware of our sensitivity, then we protect ourselves, then we take care of ourselves, and therefore we could be, among people and in the world in an easier way. So if there is sadness and temperament and anger and sensitivity, the awareness of that allows me to take care of myself and then move on. Such as if I was born without one leg or an issue with one leg, I can go into the victimization of how come everybody's got two and I don't. Or I can look at my left leg is sensitive, my right leg is powerful, my hands are powerful, my mind, my personality is powerful. I'm going to walk around, I'm going to take care of my leg. Whether
yeah,
the technology allows me to have, aesthetic leg or it doesn't or whatever it is, I'm going to handle this, but I'm going to bring myself into moving forward with all the resources that I do have.
right.
And I'm not going to let go of these resources because I don't have a leg. So you
Yes.
imagine the same thing when you bring it into a psychological construct, right? There might be, yes, I do have sensitivities around some matters.
Hmm.
I can understand it, take care of myself, protect myself on around this, but move on with life with all the other strength that I have.
Yes.
Does that make
It
sense?
it totally does. It's so interesting. I was actually speaking with a woman this morning. She's a blind chef and she became blind at 28. And, she was a chef. She did culinary school and everything and was used to all of these things. And she now is at a place where it is gratitude. She's thankful that technology has come so far from where it was before she was even blind because, like now she can still participate in podcasts and there's like braille things that she can do and show her cooking now online. And she said, she teaches other people who are blind, and there are some people who are in a place that are like, oh, woe is me. But she's like, but then you live in that space and you don't climb out of it. And I'm thinking of the awareness and integration therapy and or the theory and just like how it can really help people just come out of that shell. Because I'm just thinking of some people that I know that I feel like I'm like, damn, you're just angry for no reason. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you don't have to live that way. And I love that there's techniques to really make you just appreciate life and make you see the bigger picture to make you a better person and a more authentic person.
Yes. But I mean, if I'm always angry, either the world is not creating my expectation. I have a lot of shouldism that it's not happening. And it's a lot of those. The reality is what is, and I'm resisting it. And I'm
Mm,
saying it to be. Or that I'm creating this concept of I'm a victim of the world. I mean, we all get victimized at one place. I don't think there's any human being on the face of the earth that does not feel victimized at one point. Some of us more than the other, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
yes, I was molested when I was a child. I was neglected as a child. I came to the US when I was 12 on my own and
Mm.
I can go on and on and on and on about the things that I should have had that I didn't. But I can hold that space as poor me and look at what happened to me, or I can look at myself and have compassion for myself
Yeah.
and look at, it's okay. I know you went through that, but look how you've survived it. Look
And
at how
thrived.
you've come through. Look at, yes, the world didn't promise you a lot of, the rose garden, but then
Yeah.
it also did promise you, and, it also helped you survive. Like if I
Yes.
came here at age 12 and raised myself, it wasn't just me. There were so many beautiful people who were there to support me, to, raise me with me, to be here. So that's where, you shift from that kind of like an angry, from the world didn't give me what I need to give it to me and it should have, to look at, yes, some of my expectation didn't come through. Some of the things I got is not like everybody else, but look at all the other pieces I got, that if I'm still alive, there's something that were given to me that make me be alive. So shifting again, going back to the word gratitude we were talking about, to bring myself into a state of, happiness and fulfilled, like more than anything, being fulfilled in life every day that I'm living.
Absolutely. Like it's just that word gratitude. I'm reflecting on it hard during this conversation. And I'm like, it's so true. This podcast is about helping people get unstuck in life and stop living in Groundhog's Day. Do you feel like this, technique just can help people thrive and do that? Like, because a lot of people are kind of stuck in that Groundhog's Day, but don't even realize it and then can get jaded. Like, how can people get out of that?
Absolutely. I mean, the research we've done on a clinical level as a psychotherapy, we found that it minimizes depression 75%, anxiety 64%, raises self-esteem and self-efficacy and confidence. We even did this as a self-help model in students, in Cal State Long Beach students, where we just gave them modules of, guided journaling, no therapy, no coaching. Still, we got 64% minimization of depression and anxiety. Based on that is why we created the app. We said, okay, if self-work and self-help modules is creating such an amazing numbers, great. So that's where we created the app, where it's a guided journaling through the app, and then it has meditation, it has, skill building concepts, it has videos, it has all of those to guide, in 31 areas of your life. Any area that you might love it, it's there. So we started with that, and even with going through one area as they finish, they do like these 5 questions before and after. Even in those self-survey, it showed about 65 to 70% improvement in that area of life, just by guided journaling. Wow. And then we added the AI companion, which you could ask questions actually, right? Like, I don't know, you get upset about your daughter or sister or, your husband, and you go in just like, my husband just said this, what do you think I should do? And it'll give you like pondering questions, they'll give you skills, it gives you, like 10 to 12 things that you could do at that moment, not only to take care of yourself, but how to communicate with your, the person you're thinking about. So that also is creating an amazing improvement in like skills. I had, my husband was interesting. He went to his barber and he was just showing him the app, and he says, oh, I want to work on that. So he says, I have an issue with my teenage son. So I asked the Mira AI companion, says, what could I do with my teenage son because he's not talking to me? So Mira gives him, 10 things to do. So he takes pictures of those. So the next month when my husband goes, he says, well, how was it? He says, it's amazing. I've never had a better relationship with my son based on those 10 things that was said to me, and I practiced them. So we see by numbers that how things are changing just by, shifting those attitudes, becoming aware of yourself, taking control over yourself, and taking control, being intentional in life while you get the skills to move forward.
I love it. I'm like, I'm going to need that app immediately. It's called the Foojan app, correct?
Yes, it's Foojan, Foojan. It's on Apple Store and Google Play.
I'm like, how convenient just to have that companion right in your pocket when you're about to make like a rash decision, and you can actually, if you can't go through all the steps, you can actually get some assistance to help you go through those steps and make wise decisions.
And man, therapy too.
Okay. It's like free therapy in your pocket.
Yes.
We touched a little bit about trauma, but I was wondering with like addictive patterns, like how do people break from addictive patterns? Can you speak on that a little bit?
So addictive patterns, some of it is just rituals, right? That we kind of got into it by accident or watching other people to do it, or it has some level of pleasure for us and we moved, and we did it. So as long as it's just a habit, then you can see how there's 2 ways of changing. One is either we're getting some pain and we want to take ourselves out of the pain, so we change our habit, or we see pleasure in something else, so we change our habit because of pleasure in something else. That's more of a habitual construct that we've created. Addiction is a whole different dynamic. Addiction is its own animal. It's an own kind of like what I call it, a condition. which starts with a ritual, starts with something, but it changes almost the brain chemistry where you become very obsessive about a concept. And that what I call is you shift the dynamic of something that is no longer something that is destructive, but you attach a positive thought process around
Like
it,
a pleasurable connotation with it.
a pleasurable connotation. And that's just the kind of like it becomes a delusional thinking. And I say that because I have an addict mind and I know addiction in and out. I started with sucking my, it was an addiction. And then it was cigarettes for almost 30 some years. Then I, quit cigarettes. Then it was food. And so I know an addict mind. An addict mind gets attached. There's an attachment to something that we think is pleasurable and I can't exist without. But it's not, it's destructive. Most of the time when we look at the dynamic of addiction, obviously there's some component which could be genetic, handing down from families to families. Another concept is the trauma, where if there was trauma, if there was high anxiety, if there were things that we didn't know how to regulate our emotion as a young child, nobody taught us, we don't know how to handle our emotion. The first time you use something, whether it's a behavior or a drug or alcohol, that we use something, it calms down your system, you get attached to it. And then, when you want to let it go, all of these emotion comes up. You have no idea what to do with it. And then you go back at it, right? So it could be gambling. It could be behavioral, right? Sex, love, gambling, gaming, pornography. It could be any of those behaviors, or it could be, any substances that you would use that calms down. And most of the addict, I've worked with addiction for about 30 years. And that's how it works. And it lies, your brain lies to itself. Your brain manipulates itself. So it's a whole dynamic to start getting to know your different sides, getting to know your addictive side and what it wants. And then, replacing some good habits while you watch the other side, but also learning how to handle your emotion. Because ultimately, when you learn how to regulate your emotion and be in control of your emotions, then you can systematically remove yourself from those habits and move. And then also, dissociate the pleasure and attach appropriate symptom, which is like it's a destruction. Like this is poison for me. So you attach the actual destruction to that behavior or the substance, and you attach pleasure to different angles of things that, you might move. So the dynamic, Beverly, in any sort of addiction is almost similar. That's why I call it a disease. Depending on what behavior or drug or substance you use, the outcome of the addiction is different. Okay, if you gamble, the outcomes are different. If you use heroin or fentanyl, the outcomes are different, or the cocaine or crystal meth. But the dynamic is very different in what happens in your brain and body.
Wow. Do you think like the Foojan app can help some addicts?
Yes, because first of all, it has a section that has addiction as part of it that you look at. But also right now, I teach the course Drug and Health in Cal State Long Beach. Part of what I've done with my students is I let them go through these journaling because they start looking at how do they feel and how they handle their feelings in different areas of life. They go back to some of like their relationship with their family, their mother, their father. A lot of them share with me that in those journalings that like their father was alcoholic, their grandmother was, like a drug addict, and how it came in the system of the family, how they didn't learn how to handle their anxiety. So the more that they get and understand this part, they start working in that part. And a lot of them at the end of our 15 session, which I asked them to present like what they get out of it, the awareness integration theory, how did it impact them? You see in all of them, like I used to smoke like, all day marijuana. I cut it down only to nights, or I quit smoking, or I quit drinking. Like you can see just based on some of this awareness, they start the process. They start the process of taking care of themselves. And obviously after that, then, they need support, like possibly the 12-step programs. You need accountability buddies out there, and part of this is creating other people. You ask other people for their resources. You ask them to support you. in anything that you want, not only for your success, but also for your vulnerabilities and getting successful around your vulnerabilities. So all of the support someone who is, with an addiction to move forward from where they are when they get an awareness and heal their trauma.
Right. I think that's so helpful because there's many people out there struggling. And, I think it's very common in this day and age where people do have addictive behaviors, that aren't even spoken about. But I love that the Foojan app can help. And I just love thinking also just if we live in awareness and gratitude, like if you think about it, like what that can play in your behavior patterns.
Any change only happens after you're aware of it. If you're unaware, if it's then, and we live 5% kind of in our conscious world, and then that 95% is, running you subconsciously. Although these were someday conscious, and you kind of put it on automatic, like driving, how much automatic we drive. But the point is that in order to change something that is happening automatically and it's not working for us, you first got to become aware.
Yeah.
How it's impacting you. What are the thoughts and behaviors that are getting this created? What are the emotions that are sourcing this? Where did it come from? And then look at how else can it be and how can I shift these? But without that awareness, we just repeat the same things over and over again.
Yeah. And it's like you said earlier, caring about your well-being, like that mental wellness. Speaking of mental wellness, I'm wondering, is there one common myth or any kind of common myths about that you'd like to clear up?
I think that one of the things that happens for people is that they hope that their environment has to change in order for them to be happy. And I think
That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. I think that's also, sorry to interrupt you, I think that's also a reason why people get stuck in life, because they're like, well, I just live in Missouri, New York, wherever. I'm not in I don't know, Mexico, living my best life. Like, I'm just here. I'm a housewife doing nothing. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just thinking that way.
And that's very true. And the point is that if truly your environment is toxic, and you do need to get out of that toxic relationship, toxic house, toxic something, it's still you that's got to do it.
Yeah.
Or that you could be living in an environment and finding yourself happy. I can't tell you, these past 35 years, I've been privy to a lot of trauma, and I've learned so much from my client. I had one person who shared with me that her husband used to beat her up every day when he came back from morgue, used to drink and used to beat her up, and then would go to sleep. She had figured out how to create this cycle really fast and how to sit so that he wouldn't beat her at her head, and how to save her children. She did this and it's like figured out how to get him to sleep faster, and then she handled her children and all of that. When she came to me, her husband had passed away. And as I was, I had worked with domestic violence. I've created 2 shelters in domestic violence, transitional housing for domestic violence, because I've really worked a lot on this area. I was surprised. I learned so much from this woman, which she said, I loved him. I knew that he was ill. He wasn't doing this as malice. And I knew my children loved him, and he created an amazing life. This was his illness. So I had learned how to handle his illness and be happy. And truly, she was not traumatized. I learned from this woman.
Wow.
Although your environment, I couldn't live in that. Her environment was so hostile. And I had met her 2 daughters, no trauma.
Wow.
And how you could be in this environment, I'm not saying people should. I'm just sharing with you that how much an internal state that you take things in your own control, you figure out how you want to live and survive in this, and that you're part of how to handle this could shift you from victimization and misery into happiness.
Oh my gosh.
Does that incredible. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she figured out a way to find her own happy.
To find her own happiness. Now, again, I want everybody to hear that you need to protect yourself, take care of yourself, hold your honor, and, never, don't have that with your family. But yes. I just want to give you an example of, in the worst scenario, how someone can create. And, you saw the book and the movie that I created with the, Viktor Frankl being in a concentration camp, how horrifying can that be? And him holding himself in a place of how to help other people and how to create this thing in his own life that he could be doing that, right?
Life is
So,
beautiful.
yes, life is
Yeah.
beautiful. So again, I hope nothing like that ever happens to anyone, but you also see the power that you have internally.
Gosh, it's so deep. It's so wild if you think of what you can just do within your own self. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's with the awareness, like really just being yourself, living in a place of gratitude, getting the Foojan App, all of these things can just honestly, I mean, I just want to thrive in life. And I feel like that's what my listeners want to do. So this is a beautiful conversation. I would just like to hear from you. If you have one last quick tip our listeners can use right now to get better and just to feel better, and to get unstuck in life. Just a little recap.
We are responsible for our own happiness.
Yes.
We are. And the more that I know that, if I go toward my own strength and resiliency and look at who I am, my essence, then I can live fulfilled in life and I can co-create with life. I can't control life, but I can co-create with life consistently and shift the years that I'm living into a place where I can be my best. I can give my best to the people who are around me and hope to gain their best. And, in this relationship that we are together, remember, we're only here a couple of years.
Yeah.
And, each year has its own amazing concept. If you have children, you know how fast they grow up and you're like, oh, well, those are only those years. You can't bring them back. You can't bring your youth back. So it's almost like enjoying each year the way it is that it's given to you, because it's not going to be given back to you. That's it.
Right.
So it's how to use your essence, who you are, your amazing self, and bringing everybody else's amazing together and create and enjoy every single part of your life that you can have.
Yes. I mean, you're not saying there are not going to be some rainy days, some bad days.
Of course.
Yeah. But you can still build that life for yourself.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Foojan. I mean, you're just incredible. You're so insightful. I'd love it if you could tell my listeners a place where they can find you, anything you're offering, if you're coaching, your therapy, your app, all the good stuff that, of course, I will include in the show notes. But if you can just, briefly let them know.
Absolutely. You can go to my website, which is my name, FoojanZeine.com. You could see all of it. You could see, all my books, you could connect with me, all of that. I'm on all the social media, just Foojan Zeine or Dr. Foojan Zeine. And then if you want the app is Foojan, and you could go to Foojan.com and, know all about the app. That's the website of the app. And you can get it from Apple Store or Google if you have Android. If you want to know about awareness integration theory, awarenessintegration.com. It has all the research. It has everything there that you ever wanted to know.
Thank you very much for that. I'm really excited to download that app. I'm like, it's speaking to me because I'm like, I just feel like something like that in my back pocket. I feel like I'm very conscious. Well, I try to be. I'm like, before I bite my tongue and someone in my family is like, no, you're not. But I feel like I try to be very conscious. But to have something like that in my back pocket to be like, wait a minute, let me answer these questions before, I make a real hard decision. It's just so incredibly helpful. I've never met anyone who's made an app before, so I just think you're so cool, so really incredible and gifted and smart. Once again, I'm thanking you so much for being on the show. Well, the very last thing I'd like to ask you is, do you have a mantra, a quote, or words to live by?
I want to be the best that I can be and leave the world with a better place that I came that was given to me.
Yes.
And to be able to make a difference in everybody's life in a positive way. I can make a difference and make them pissed off. I prefer to make a difference so that it worked for them. And that's my mantra.
Well, I definitely feel like you're doing that. You've done that for me, and I'm sure you've been doing that for our listeners during this podcast. Wow. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Foojan Zeine. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for everyone who is hearing us from their heart.
All right, guys, that was Beverly Explains It All. Make sure you check out the show notes so you can connect with Foojan.